What did the weird kid in your school do that you'll never forget? He was weird as F, but he smeared dog shit on his bully's combination lock before school, and everybody called the bully shit hands for 2.5 years. We called a kid Doo-Doo Brown for most of a semester because he shit his pants in class, but we only so hard on him because less than a month before, he absolutely humiliated a classmate who pissed herself in class. Well, I only went so hard on him for that reason. She was my friend, and it only happened because the teacher refused to let her go to the bathroom, and she didn't want to get in trouble, but maybe the others were just mean. It was middle school, and we were all effing feral with hormones and general rage. He brought a whole rotisserie chicken to class, and ate it like an apple, during a lecture. Was his name Max? Because my nephew kind of had a reputation for doing that. He disappeared at his sister's graduation, and came back with a rotisserie chicken, and ate the whole thing during the ceremony. He'd ran a couple miles to pick it up at a store. Apparently, he did it every day during lunch. He used to get made fun of for having a Thomas the Tank Engine rolling backpack, so he set it on fire in the bathroom. We had a lot of charity type things, where you would donate school supplies to poor kids, and what ended up happening was that the super gangsta high schoolers walked around with Dora the Explorer backpacks, and it became a cool thing to do. Hit the school bully over the head with a mini baseball bat, and split his head wide open. The school bully was absolutely brutal, but I winced seeing it. Weird kid was charged with aggravated battery, and expelled from school. He ended up becoming a very successful diesel mechanic. He wasn't weird at all, but didn't fit into the school and suburb considered to be normal. I was probably one of the weird kids at my school. I got bullied often, including once being held down by older boys, while the other one literally took a running kick at my balls. Could not walk right for a while after that. I just remember going blind from pain. I had another kid that bullied me in art class. I had tried to get the teachers' and principal's attention, to no avail. One day I had enough. We were working with different color oil paints. When our canisters would empty at our desks, we went up to the teacher's desk and got more paint from large paint jars. That day when the bully started on me, I waited for the teacher to look away. I grabbed 2 full paint jars, and opened them over his head. I got in trouble for that one, suspended I think. My parents let me play video games for 3 days off of school, and I had fun. The bully didn't get in trouble at school. His parents grounded him, though, for ruining his clothes. Climbed into the first floor lab, through the window, as chemistry lesson was in progress, posed dramatically at the door, announced, "Join me," in the quarters of time, and left. Hey, I've got one from the perspective of a teacher, and it's pretty wholesome. I had one of the weird kids, a few years back. The kid was sent to the principal office for the wackiest shit, like putting chewing gum in other people's hair, but also his own hair, etc. Didn't have a lot of friends. Anyway, also had a special need girl in that class. She was older than every other kid, and an adult helper was there to help her write down the class, and explain things to her, when needed. Anyway, the girl farted. It just went off, and she looked up, and I could see in her eyes she was panicking. Being the special need girl is always hard, but to be the special need girl, who farted in a class, full 12-year-olds, was even worse. Now, to the credit of my students, they wouldn't have mocked her outwardly and they were pretty understanding of this girl's situation. But before realizing that it was her, they would have made comments, and asked, who had farted. Already, I could see a few kids looking up from their papers and all. They all had the look of, who farted? And some were already laughing. But then, out of nowhere, the weird knight in golden armor looked up from his test, grinning ear to ear, and ripped the nastiest fart I've ever heard. He was a kid, but this thing sounded like a scream of a dying animal. Like I'm almost 30, and I don't do sounds like that. Plus, he moaned the most obscene sound maybe ever. It sounded like, ooh-woo, years before ooh-woo was even a thing. The entire class was either disgusted, or dying with laughter. Weird kid said, he was sorry, then went off a second time with a pained look on his face. I had caught up to what he had done, and why he had done it. I yelled at him, just enough to be believable, asked him to go to the bathroom if he needed to, and asked him to stay at the end of the class. The entire class knew he had done F up. They all went back to their test, and the weird kid acted like nothing had happened. At the end of class everyone left, but I told the weird kid to wait at the door. The girl's helper came to me, and was like, okay, quick heads up, I think he did it on purpose to help the girl, and I was like, yeah, I think so too, but let him say that. Because maybe it wasn't it. I was 99% sure it was what he had done. But anyway, I let him back in, and asked him why he had done that. I also told him I thought I knew, and he admitted that, yes, he had done it to cover for the girl, because he didn't want her to feel bad about it, and that way people laughed at him, but that, because he was always doing things people laughed at, it was okay. I told him it was a cool thing to do, he agreed, and went on with his day, like it was nothing. Goddamn hero. He had a tooth he was able to easily remove and put back in, for some reason, and would do it for a quarter. Surprisingly, I think he actually made quite a bit of money doing it, because I constantly saw people paying him. So, good on him, I guess. Mouthed off to the teacher, who got so angry, he stormed down the aisle, grabbed the kid's desk, and slid it, with the kid still sitting in it, all the way to the back of the class, and made him sit there for weeks later. Same kid had a big brother, who caught a fly in the library, and popped it in his mouth, and swallowed it whole. We later heard after high school, that the kid was goofing around with a gun, and accidentally gut-shot his big brother. We were playing baseball, he was either on the first or the second base, can't remember exactly, and I was next to him. He said, "Watch this, I'm gonna do something cool." He pulled his pants down, and took a shit on the base. I was shocked, and no one else saw it. I didn't know how to act, I was speechless. The kid batting got a hit, and the kid who pooped on the base, ran to the next base. Then the next kid went onto the base, that had poop on it, and slid. He was like, "Who the F shat on the base? What the heck? How did no one else notice? Did you tell someone after?" I wasn't like exactly next to him, I was kind of front of the base, and he was behind me. He wasn't in a full squat, he was standing squatting. Took a quick one, as the kid batted, the pooping kid was done, and just ran to the next base. By the time the next kid slid onto the poop, I was still trying to process what just happened. It was last period, PE class, playing baseball. I was the shy kid, and didn't have many friends. I told some of my friends, the next day, and they just laughed. He was a rancher's kid, and he showed up on the high school campus, in a front loader, filled with bagels. Literally hundreds of bagels, and poured them out on the central terrace. 6-foot-high pile of bagels. He parked the thing back in the lot, walked back to his pile of bagels, and just started chucking bagels at people. Started a bagel fight, that was legendary. Dude brought a waffle maker to school, and during PE, he stayed hidden in the dressing room, until they locked it, and then he chilled there, and made some waffles for himself, until the class ended, and the dressing rooms were unlocked again. The smell of waffles was nice, though. There was a girl in high school, who would hiss at people, and carry around a stuffed pumpkin. She told me that I was fun to bully, because I was too nice, and wouldn't do anything about it. Nulo, when you get bullied by the weird kid. I found that some of the losers or nerds were the worst bullies of all. There was a guy who everyone hated and picked on. One day, I'm walking down the corridor, when he pushes me into the lockers, and injures my shoulder. Suddenly, though, he was on the floor, and some guy was beating the shit out of him. It was one of the cool kids, who bullied me, but only in a verbal way. He'd say nasty things, but never touched me physically. He was furious, and said, "People like him don't get to be bullies, when they don't even shower, and have no friends." I said, I disagreed with how he handled it, but thanked him for sticking up for me, and he never bullied me again. There was a quiet kid in my school, Alex, who always carried a big notebook, and sat alone, scribbling during breaks. One day, our art teacher asked him to share what he'd been working on. He had written an entire fantasy novel, complete with its own world, mythology, and languages. My class was amazed, and after that day, he was no longer seen as the weird kid, but as the creative genius no one had noticed before. No idea where is he now, though. For context, someone threw a banana peel across the classroom. It just so happened to land next to the weird kid. The teacher, very stupidly, thought it was the weird kid. Like, how is it them? It flew across the room and landed beside them. Anyway, the kid proceeded to lose his shit after being accused, opened the window, and tried jumping out of it. It was on the 3rd floor. I wasn't there for it, but apparently, he backed out, or something. And so, it became the famous story of our year group. Everyone knew about it. emptied a fire extinguisher all over the auditorium stage, attacked teachers with a yardstick, screaming, "I'm fighting the Mooney Men." Emotionally scarred every girl he ever dated by threatening suicide on a near-weekly basis. Plucked his hair out, to the point of having to wear a hat for a semester, and then kept it all in a baggie. Developed a cocaine habit, and in every single example, his father would bail him out, and he would receive next to zero punishment. I was the weird kid, to be honest. I used to lie like Jay Cartwright. In primary school, I think at one point, I said, my uncle owned Xbox, and that I had a golden Xbox 720, that isn't coming out until next year, among many other stupid and insignificant lies. Everyone probably thought I was a D, but luckily, I've managed to channel that into writing fiction stories as an adult. The weird kid was me. In high school, we had a teacher who had a creative solution to disruptive behavior. When a student needed to be removed from the room, he'd use that opportunity to give a pop quiz. 10 extra credit points couldn't be made up. And the questions were silly, trivial things, like, what day of the week is it? Or what color shirt am I wearing? The idea was to make the troublesome student miss out on easy points while they stood out in the hall. Clever idea. Cool teacher. But $5 is $5, so, at the end of the semester, when someone wanted their B+ to become an A, I would act out enough to trigger a quiz, and then collect after class. It didn't happen often enough for him to catch on, that I know of. But at least 3 times throughout the year. The most disruptive was when, shortly before he entered the room before class, I contorted myself to hide on the lower shelf of a rolling equipment cart, near his desk. He didn't notice until he was taking roll, and got to my name. The rest of the class couldn't hold in their giggles. He turned, and saw me, and let out the heaviest sigh. We don't pay teachers enough. I was one of the weird kids, got picked on mercilessly, from 2nd to 6th grade, for being quiet and timid. Then one day at recess, I snapped, and grabbed one bully by the shoulders, and bounced his head off the concrete wall behind him. Then I got picked on for having anger management issues, until I went to a different high school than all of them. Dude caught a live wolf spider behind a cabinet in class. Turns on a hot glue gun, and proceeds to shove the hot glue gun between his fingers to cover the spider and his hand with hot glue. Ended up with 1st and 2nd degree burns. Same dude launched bottle rockets out of his ass, more 2nd degree burns on his ass, this time. Also, heated up a penny in chemistry class, and branded himself with it. I'm just now realizing, this kid liked burning himself. During lunchtime, he and his friends jumped the fence to the automotive area of the school, found a blowtorch or some kind of lighter, and lit it above the opening of a fuel drum, then it exploded. After being knocked out, his friends ran, and then the school went into lockdown and he was flown by helicopter to a hospital, 4 hours away. He came back to school, a few weeks later, with half his hair gone, no eyebrows, and a slightly scarred face. After being the most popular kid at school, it quickly ended, when he started screaming the N-word, and other slurs, at the Aboriginal student. Not smart, considering, about 70% of the school was Aboriginal, and the town was 60% Aboriginal. This happened in Victoria, Australia, in late October 2022. You can Google "fuel drum explosion." 7 News. I'll use the term weird kid loosely here, because the weird kid turned into someone with schizophrenia, who ruined my last academic years. He made all sorts of accusations against me. This was a time when the internet was just coming into schools, etc. Literally every single pupil turned against me, and for 2 years, I was truly alone. I was banned from all computer access, and grounded for most of this time, not that I wanted to leave. I was arrested twice, and interviewed by police, and my parents found out I'd been self-harming during this, and they went ballistic at me. Just after failing my exams, all charges were dropped, and he admitted he had done everything himself. No apologies, no support, nothing. I was accused of stabbing him with pens, attempted rape, smashing his house windows, cutting the phone lines, email harassment, bullying, theft, and much more. I'm 39, and still haven't forgiven my parents. My dad was a police officer too, unbelievably. More of a quiet guy than a weird guy. But he turns around out of nowhere, and says, "I'm going to fake a seizure." Sitting in the front, just blasts his desk and chair over, starts writhing around on the floor, making crazy noise, and knocking stuff over, for probably 2 minutes. Just gets up, and says, "Thought I was having a seizure." Teacher was just shocked, and just went back to teaching. One of the most out-of-character things I've ever seen anyone do. Dude was like the polar opposite of a troublemaker. It was absolutely hilarious. But this was a pretty rowdy class, and the teacher didn't really have much control over the room, so, nutty stuff was happening all the time. There was this guy in my high school, named Mike Tyson. Yes, that was literally his name, and he was high-functioning autistic, with an incredible knowledge and obsession with cars and motors. He didn't take shit from anyone, not even faculty. He acted like the king of the school, and would make motor sounds while power walking through the hallways, and cut people off. It was hilarious, because he was so serious while doing it. Nobody seemed to mind it either. That's just how he was, and we all accepted it. Poor kid was tormented all the time by bullies and the cool kids. We were in woodshop one day, and there were 2 bullies of a larger group in the class with me and this kid. They were talking one day about getting a bunch of pills of some kind, but they couldn't find any. The weird kid spoke up and asked what they were looking for. I don't recall the reply. Something to do with raving. This was the 90s. Weird kid comes in the next day with what they asked for, and as the transaction was made, there seemed to be genuine gratitude and respect coming from the bullies towards this kid, for the first time. Of course, one of them threw a fake punch to make the kid flinch anyway, because of course they did. About an hour later, those 2 kids are seen waddling out to the parking lot, crapping themselves the whole way. Weird kid said he put his Exalco knife to work the previous night, had shaved down a bunch of colon cleanse tablets into similar appearing pills. The bullies were all too happy to pay for and consume. For the rest of high school, no one messed with this kid. Smartest kid in school, late 80s, parents both worked at NASA, and he's currently a professor at Caltech. He was brutally teased and bullied back when it was normalized. The ringleader was a classic 80s bully, preppy, and drove a beloved BMW 2002, lovingly restored, and shiny candle-apple red. Rob, the geek, got him back good. He took a dead snake feeder rat, and put it in a large ball jar, with a few inches of hydrogen peroxide and water. He sealed the jar, Slim Jimmed into the dude's car, during football practice, and tucked it under the seat. It was still hot fall in California our senior year, 1987, and it didn't take long, few days, for the chemicals to liquefy, and putrefy the rat, and build pressure, until the jar exploded with great effect in the school parking lot. You could smell the damage from hundreds of yards away, and they actually smelled it from the office, probably 300 yards away, and called the cops. The bully's family professionally detailed and steamed the car multiple times before the cleaners admitted it was a lost cause, and the car was totaled. Rob never told a soul until at our 10-year reunion. He confided in me that he did it. "Well done, Rob. This would also ruin an entire house," Rob told me. "I still can almost taste that horrific smell." I'm 50 now, but I still remember this incident that happened in middle school. We were at the end of science class, doing cleanup on the black wooden tables that each sat 2 students. All of a sudden, our science teacher, Mrs. Snap, yells out, "Natalia! What are you doing?" Natalia was definitely one of the weird kids. Coke bottle glasses, hair, looked like she licked electrical outlets for fun. Natalia replies back, "Eating Comet." Comet was an abrasive all-purpose powder cleaner we used to scrub and clean back in the 80s. Mrs. Snap asked Natalia, "Why are you eating Comet?" Natalia's response, "Because I like the crunch." Whole room bursts out laughing, including Mrs. Snap.